The small apartment was quiet except for the sound of piano music. Maya Chen sat on a wooden stool, her feet dangling above the floor because she was too short to reach the ground. Her tiny fingers moved across the old piano keys, playing a song that most adults would find difficult. She was only 8 years old, but when she played, something magical happened. The music filled every corner of their home. Maya's mother stood in the kitchen doorway listening. She had heard this song 1,000 times, but it still made her eyes fill with tears. How did her little girl play like this? It seemed impossible. Just 5 years ago, Maya was a normal 3-year-old child, running around and playing with toys like any other kid. Then one day, everything changed. Maya's father remembered that day clearly. He had been playing an old song on his phone, a classical piece by a famous composer. Little Maya had stopped playing with her dolls and walked over to the piano. Without any lessons or training, she climbed onto the stool and started playing the same song, note for note, perfectly. Her parents thought it was just luck at first. Maybe she hit the right keys by accident. But then she did it again, and again, with different songs, complex songs that professional musicians spent months learning. That was when Maya's parents knew their daughter was special. They didn't have much money. Her father worked at a grocery store and her mother cleaned houses to help pay the bills. Their apartment was small, with only 2 bedrooms and a kitchen that barely fit a table. The piano had been a gift from Maya's grandmother before she passed away. It was old and some of the keys stuck, but it was all they had. Despite their struggles, Maya's parents made a decision. They would do whatever it took to help their daughter's gift grow. They cut back on everything. No more eating at restaurants. No new clothes unless absolutely necessary. They saved every penny they could. Finally, they had enough money to pay for piano lessons. Finding the right teacher was hard. Many teachers were too expensive. Others didn't believe that a 3-year-old could really play as well as her parents claimed. But then they met Mrs. Rodriguez. She was an older woman who had taught piano for 40 years. She had trained students who went on to play in big concert halls around the world. When she heard Maya play for the first time, she sat in silence for a long moment. Then she smiled and said she would teach Maya for half her normal price. She saw something in this little girl that she hadn't seen in decades of teaching. Mrs. Rodriguez became more than just a teacher. She became like family. She came to their apartment 3 times a week, carrying heavy books of sheet music. She taught Maya how to read music, how to use proper hand positions, and how to bring feeling into every note. But the amazing thing was that Maya barely needed these lessons. It was like she already knew everything. Mrs. Rodriguez just helped her polish what was already there. Maya practiced every single day. While other children her age were watching cartoons or playing outside, Maya sat at the piano for 6 hours. 6 hours might seem like torture for a young child, but Maya loved it. The piano wasn't work for her. It was like breathing. When she played, the rest of the world disappeared. There was only the music and her fingers dancing on the keys. Her parents worried sometimes. Was this too much pressure for such a young child? Should they let her play outside more, make friends, be normal? But whenever they suggested taking a break, Maya would shake her head. She didn't want breaks. She wanted to play. Music made her happy in a way that nothing else could. The neighbors in their building got used to the sound of piano music at all hours. Some complained at first, saying it was too loud or too early in the morning. But after a while, even the grumpiest neighbors started to appreciate it. One elderly man who lived next door told Maya's father that he looked forward to hearing her play each day. It made his lonely apartment feel less empty. Maya's reputation began to grow in their small community. People talked about the little girl who played like an angel. When the local community center had events, they asked Maya to perform. She would wear her best dress, which her mother had sewn by hand, and play for crowds of people. Everyone who heard her was amazed. How could someone so small create such beautiful music? At school, Maya was different from the other children. While they talked about games and toys, Maya thought about music. She didn't have many friends because she spent all her free time practicing. Some kids thought she was strange. Others were jealous of the attention she got. But Maya didn't mind being alone. She had her piano, and that was enough. Mrs. Rodriguez pushed Maya harder as the years went by. She introduced her to pieces by the great composers: Mozart, Beethoven, Chopin, Rachmaninoff. Each piece was more difficult than the last. Each one required more skill, more feeling, more understanding. And each time Maya mastered them faster than Mrs. Rodriguez expected. It was like watching a flower bloom in fast motion. Every week, Maya grew better and better. By the time Maya turned 8, she could play pieces that college music students struggled with. Her small hands had grown stronger and more flexible. Her understanding of music had deepened. She didn't just play the notes on the page. She understood what the composer was trying to say. She could make the piano laugh or cry, whisper or shout. The old piano in their apartment had never sounded so beautiful. Maya's father often sat on the couch after work, exhausted from his long day at the grocery store. His back hurt and his feet were sore, but when Maya played, all his pain seemed to fade away. He would close his eyes and let the music wash over him. In those moments, he forgot about their small apartment, their old furniture, and their empty bank account. He only felt proud, so incredibly proud of his little girl. Her mother felt the same way. As she folded laundry or cooked dinner, she would listen to Maya practice. Sometimes she cried, not from sadness, but from overwhelming emotion. How did they get so lucky? What had they done to deserve such a special child? She prayed every night, thanking God for this gift and asking for the strength to help Maya reach her full potential. Mrs. Rodriguez knew that Maya was ready for something bigger. This small apartment, this old piano, these simple performances at community centers, they weren't enough anymore. Maya needed a bigger stage. She needed opportunities that would challenge her and help her grow even more. She needed the world to hear what this 8-year-old girl could do. One evening, after a particularly difficult lesson, Mrs. Rodriguez sat down with Maya's parents. She had something important to tell them, something that would change everything. Maya was in her room, still practicing even though the lesson had ended an hour ago. The sound of Chopin's nocturne drifted through the apartment as Mrs. Rodriguez pulled out an envelope from her bag. Inside was an invitation, an opportunity, a chance that most young musicians only dreamed about. Maya's parents looked at the papers with wide eyes, their hands shaking slightly as they read the words. Could this be real? Was their daughter really being given this chance? Mrs. Rodriguez smiled at their shocked faces. She had known this day would come. From the moment she first heard Maya play 5 years ago, she had known that this child was destined for greatness. Now the rest of the world was about to discover what she had known all along. Maya Chen wasn't just talented. She wasn't just gifted. She was a genuine musical prodigy, and her journey was only beginning. Mrs. Rodriguez sat across from Maya's parents at their small kitchen table. The envelope lay open between them, and the letter inside seemed to glow with importance. Maya's father read it again, his lips moving silently as he went through each word. Her mother had her hand over her mouth, her eyes still wide with shock. The letter was from the National Young Musicians Competition. It was the biggest, most important competition for young, talented musicians in the entire country. Children from wealthy families with expensive teachers competed there. Students from famous music schools sent their best performers. Winning this competition meant scholarships, opportunities, and a future in music that most people could only dream about. And Maya had been invited to compete. Mrs. Rodriguez explained how it happened. She had sent recordings of Maya playing to the competition organizers months ago. She hadn't told Maya's parents because she didn't want to get their hopes up. Hundreds of children were nominated every year, but only 12 were chosen as finalists. The competition received her recordings and invited her to audition. Mrs. Rodriguez had taken Maya to that audition 3 weeks ago, telling her parents it was just a regular lesson at a different location. Maya's mother felt a flash of anger. Why hadn't Mrs. Rodriguez told them? But then she understood. Their teacher was protecting them from disappointment. If Maya hadn't been chosen, they never would have known. They never would have felt the pain of rejection. Mrs. Rodriguez had carried that risk all by herself. Maya's father asked the question that worried him most. How much would this cost? They barely had enough money for regular lessons. A national competition would mean travel expenses, new clothes for Maya, and probably fees they couldn't afford. His shoulders slumped as reality set in. This opportunity was amazing, but maybe it was too amazing for a family like theirs. Mrs. Rodriguez shook her head with a smile. She had already thought of everything. The competition would pay for their travel and hotel. They would stay in the capital city for 3 days. All meals would be provided. As for clothes, Mrs. Rodriguez had a friend who owned a formal wear shop. She had already arranged for Maya to borrow a beautiful dress for the performance. There would be no cost to them. Nothing except the courage to let Maya try. Maya's mother started crying. Not sad tears, but tears of joy and relief and fear all mixed together. This was really happening. Their little girl was going to compete on a national stage, against children from rich families, against students from the best music schools. Could Maya really do this? Was she good enough? Mrs. Rodriguez reached across the table and took both parents' hands in hers. She looked them straight in the eyes and spoke with absolute certainty. Maya wasn't just good enough. She was better than any student Mrs. Rodriguez had taught in 40 years. She had a gift that came along once in a generation, maybe once in a lifetime. The other children might have fancier training and newer pianos, but none of them had what Maya had. None of them had her natural talent and deep understanding of music. That night after Mrs. Rodriguez left, Maya's parents sat on the couch in silence. The piano was quiet for once. Maya had finally gone to bed, exhausted from hours of practice. Her father stared at the competition letter, reading it over and over. Her mother leaned against him, her mind racing with 1,000 thoughts. They talked for hours about what this meant. The competition was in 6 weeks. 6 weeks to prepare. 6 weeks for Maya to get ready for the biggest moment of her young life. What if she failed? What if the pressure was too much? What if they were setting her up for heartbreak? But then they remembered how happy Maya looked when she played. How her whole face lit up when she mastered a difficult piece. How she never complained about practicing, never asked for breaks, never seemed tired of the piano. This wasn't their dream they were pushing on her. This was her dream. She lived and breathed music. They were just trying to give her the chance to fly. The next morning, they told Maya about the competition. She was eating breakfast, a simple bowl of cereal, when her father handed her the letter. Maya read it slowly, her lips moving slightly as she took in each word. When she finished, she looked up at her parents with the biggest smile they had ever seen. Maya asked when they would leave, how many days until the competition, what piece she should play. Her excitement was pure and genuine. There was no fear in her eyes, no worry about failing. She only saw this as a chance to do what she loved most in front of more people, to share her music with the world. Mrs. Rodriguez came that afternoon to begin serious preparation. She brought a stack of sheet music, each piece more challenging than what Maya usually played. For a competition like this, Maya needed to perform something that would make the judges remember her, something technically perfect but also full of emotion and feeling. They spent 2 hours going through different options. Maya tried pieces by different composers, playing sections of each one. Mrs. Rodriguez listened carefully, watching not just Maya's fingers, but her whole body, the way she swayed with the music, the way her face showed every emotion the piece contained. Finally, they made a decision. Maya would play Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, Opus 9, No. 2. It was a beautiful piece, famous and beloved. The melody was romantic and dreamy. It started soft and gentle, then grew more passionate before ending in quiet peace. The piece was perfect for showing both Maya's technical skill and her ability to make people feel something when she played. But there was a catch. Mrs. Rodriguez explained that the competition had a special rule this year. After performing their chosen piece, each finalist would face a surprise challenge. They would be given a piece of music they had never seen before and asked to sight read it. Sight reading meant playing music for the very first time, reading the notes as you played them with no practice. This news made Maya's parents nervous. Maya was incredible at playing pieces she had practiced. But sight reading was different. It required quick thinking and the ability to anticipate what came next. Even professional musicians sometimes struggled with sight reading difficult pieces. How could they expect children to do this? Mrs. Rodriguez admitted this was unusual and challenging. But she believed Maya could handle it. They would spend part of every lesson working on sight reading skills. Maya would practice reading new music quickly, training her brain to see patterns and predict what was coming. It would be hard work, but Mrs. Rodriguez had faith in her student. For the next 6 weeks, Maya's life became completely focused on the competition. She still went to school, but her mind was always on music. During lunch, while other kids played and talked, Maya would sit quietly and imagine playing her piece. She would move her fingers slightly, practicing the hand positions in her mind. After school, she would rush home and go straight to the piano. Her mother would have a snack ready, but Maya barely ate. She was too excited to practice. 6 hours every day, sometimes more. She played the Chopin piece over and over until she could perform it perfectly, even when she was tired or distracted. Mrs. Rodriguez was demanding during these weeks. She pointed out tiny mistakes that most people wouldn't even notice. A note held slightly too long, a pause that was a fraction of a second off. dynamics that weren't quite right. Maya had to play the piece perfectly, but more than that, she had to make it beautiful. She had to make the judges feel something. The sight reading practice was harder. Mrs. Rodriguez would bring new pieces every lesson, music Maya had never seen. She would put it on the piano and give Maya just a few seconds to look at it. Then Maya had to play. At first it was a disaster. Maya would stumble over notes, lose her place, and have to stop and start over. But slowly she got better. Maya learned to look ahead while she played, her eyes reading the next measure while her fingers played the current one. She learned to recognize patterns in the music, common chord progressions and rhythms that appeared over and over. Her brain started working faster, processing the musical notation almost as quickly as she could read words in a book. 3 weeks before the competition, Maya's confidence grew. She could play her Chopin piece in her sleep. The sight reading was improving every day. Mrs. Rodriguez started bringing more difficult pieces for sight reading practice, pushing Maya harder and harder. Some of the pieces were so challenging that Mrs. Rodriguez herself would have trouble playing them without practice. Maya's parents watched their daughter transform. She had always been focused and dedicated, but now there was a new intensity in her eyes. She was a child on a mission. Nothing could distract her from her goal. When neighborhood kids knocked on the door asking if Maya could play outside, she politely said no. When her favorite TV show came on, she didn't even notice. There was only the piano and the music. 2 weeks before the competition, reality started to sink in for Maya's parents. Their little girl was really going to do this. She was going to stand on a stage in front of important judges and a huge audience. She would compete against children who had every advantage. What if something went wrong? What if she froze up? What if her old practice piano hadn't prepared her for playing on a professional concert grand piano? Mrs. Rodriguez sensed their worry and arranged something special. The final week before the competition felt like it lasted forever and passed in a blink at the same time. Maya practiced until her fingers hurt, then practiced some more. Mrs. Rodriguez came every single day now, not just 3 times a week. She wanted to make sure every detail was perfect. On Monday, they worked on Maya's stage presence. It wasn't enough to just play well. Maya needed to walk onto the stage with confidence. She needed to bow to the judges properly. She needed to sit at the piano with good posture and grace. Mrs. Rodriguez made Maya practice walking to the piano and sitting down over and over again until it looked natural. Maya felt silly at first. Why did it matter how she walked? The judges would care about her playing, not how she moved across the stage. But Mrs. Rodriguez explained that competitions were about more than just technical skill. The judges would be watching everything. First impressions mattered. A confident entrance would make them pay attention from the very first moment. Tuesday was dedicated to perfecting the emotional interpretation of the Chopin piece. Mrs. Rodriguez sat with Maya and talked about what the music meant. What story was it telling? What feelings was Chopin trying to express when he wrote these notes over 100 years ago? Maya closed her eyes and listened as Mrs. Rodriguez described a quiet night, moonlight through windows, someone remembering a lost love with both sadness and sweet memory. When Maya played the piece after that conversation, something changed. The notes were the same, but the feeling was deeper. She wasn't just hitting keys anymore. She was telling a story. Her mother, listening from the kitchen, had to wipe tears from her eyes. She had heard this piece 1,000 times in the past weeks, but this time it touched her heart in a new way. Wednesday brought the most challenging sight-reading practice yet. Mrs. Rodriguez arrived with a piece of music so difficult that Maya's father, looking over her shoulder, couldn't imagine anyone playing it on first sight. The time signatures changed constantly. There were sharps and flats everywhere. The rhythm was complex and unpredictable. Mrs. Rodriguez gave Maya 30 seconds to look at it, then told her to play. Maya's hands shook as she began. She made mistakes in the first few measures, stumbling over the unusual rhythm. But then something clicked in her brain. She stopped trying to read every single note and started looking for patterns. She let her musical instinct guide her fingers. The playing became smoother. Not perfect, but much better than it had been at the start. Mrs. Rodriguez nodded with approval. She wasn't expecting perfection on sight reading. The judges wouldn't expect that either. What mattered was that Maya could stay calm under pressure, figure out the music as she went, and recover gracefully from mistakes. Those were the skills that would serve her well in the competition. Thursday was a lighter practice day. Mrs. Rodriguez knew that too much pressure could make Maya anxious and tight. Instead of hours of intense practice, they played through the Chopin piece just a few times, focusing on enjoying the music rather than perfecting it. Then they spent time talking about the competition itself. Mrs. Rodriguez explained what to expect. There would be 12 finalists total. Each one would perform their prepared piece first. Then they would face the sight-reading challenge. The competition would last all day, with breaks between performers. Maya would probably perform somewhere in the middle, which was actually good. The judges would be warmed up but not yet tired. She also told Maya about the judges, who were called the justices. This was a tradition of the competition, a formal title that made them sound important and serious. The 3 judges were all accomplished musicians with impressive careers. One had played in symphony orchestras around the world. Another taught at the most prestigious music conservatory in the country. The third had won this same competition as a child 40 years ago and had gone on to become a famous concert pianist. The justices had a reputation for being tough critics. They didn't give compliments easily. Many talented children had left the competition in tears after receiving harsh feedback. But Mrs. Rodriguez told Maya not to worry about that. She should play for herself and for the love of music, not to please judges who might be impossible to please. Friday was a rest day. No practice at all, Mrs. Rodriguez insisted. Maya's fingers needed rest. Her mind needed rest. She should spend the day doing something fun and relaxing. Anything but thinking about piano. Maya's mother took her to the park, something they hadn't done in months. They fed ducks at the pond and ate ice cream. Maya tried to relax, but her mind kept drifting back to the competition. That night, Maya couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her mind playing through the Chopin piece over and over. She imagined herself on stage. Would she be nervous? Would her hands shake? What if she forgot the notes? She had never forgotten notes before, but what if the pressure made her mind go blank? Her mother came in to check on her and found Maya wide awake. She sat on the edge of the bed and stroked Maya's hair, the way she used to when Maya was very small. She told her daughter not to worry. Whatever happened at the competition, they were proud of her. She had already accomplished so much just by being invited to compete. No matter what the judges said, Maya was special and talented and loved. Maya fell asleep feeling a little better, her mother's words wrapping around her like a warm blanket. Saturday morning arrived with sunshine and nervous energy. They would leave for the capital city tomorrow. Mrs. Rodriguez came for one final practice session. She brought the dress Maya would wear for the competition. It was beautiful, deep blue with delicate lace on the sleeves. Maya's mother helped her try it on. It fit perfectly, making Maya look older and more elegant than her 8 years. Maya played through the Chopin piece one last time on their old home piano. It sounded beautiful. Mrs. Rodriguez had tears in her eyes when Maya finished. She hugged her young student tightly and told her she was ready. More than ready, she was going to be amazing. Sunday morning came too quickly. Maya's father had borrowed a car from a friend since they didn't own one themselves. He loaded their small suitcase into the trunk. They didn't have much to bring. One change of clothes for each of them, toiletries and Maya's sheet music. The dress hung carefully in the back seat, protected by a plastic cover. The drive to the capital city took 4 hours. Maya sat in the back seat, sometimes looking out the window at the passing scenery, sometimes closing her eyes and running through the piece in her mind. Her parents were quiet, both nervous and excited. This was the biggest thing that had ever happened to their family. They arrived at the hotel in the afternoon. It was nicer than any place they had ever stayed. The lobby had marble floors and crystal chandeliers. Maya's parents felt out of place in their simple clothes, surrounded by other families who looked wealthy and sophisticated, but the hotel staff was kind and showed them to their room. The room had 2 big beds and a window with a view of the city. Maya had never stayed in a hotel before. She wanted to explore, to jump on the beds, to order room service like she had seen in movies. But her parents reminded her to stay calm and focused. Tomorrow was the big day. That evening, they went to the concert hall where the competition would be held. The organizers had invited all the finalists to come see the space and get comfortable with it. When Maya walked into the hall, she stopped and stared. It was enormous. Rows and rows of red velvet seats faced a huge stage. The ceiling was painted with beautiful artwork. Everything gleamed and sparkled. On the stage sat a magnificent grand piano, even more beautiful than the one Maya had practiced on at the music school. The black finish was so shiny she could see her reflection in it. Mrs. Rodriguez, who had driven separately and met them there, encouraged Maya to go up on stage and try the piano. Maya climbed the steps to the stage, her footsteps echoing in the empty hall. She sat at the piano bench and placed her hands on the keys. They felt smooth and cool under her fingers. She played a few scales, and the sound that came out was incredible, rich and warm and powerful. This piano was an instrument of perfection. The other finalists were there too, each taking turns trying the piano. Maya watched them. Some were older, 10 or 11 years old. Most of them wore expensive clothes and had a confidence that came from privilege. Their parents stood nearby talking about their children's music teachers, dropping names of famous instructors and prestigious schools. One boy, about 9 years old, sat at the piano and played a complex piece by Rachmaninoff. He was technically skilled, his fingers flying over the keys with impressive speed. His parents clapped loudly when he finished, and other parents politely joined in. Maya felt a flutter of nervousness in her stomach. Everyone here was so good. How could she compete with children who had every advantage? But then she remembered what Mrs. Rodriguez always told her. She wasn't competing against them. She was just sharing her music. She was showing the judges and the audience what she could do. That was all that mattered. After all the finalists had tried the piano, an organizer gathered everyone together. She explained the schedule for tomorrow. The competition would start at 9 in the morning. Each finalist would perform in an order determined by a random draw. After all the prepared pieces were performed, there would be a lunch break. Morning came with bright sunlight streaming through the hotel curtains. Maya woke up with her heart already racing. Today was the day, the National Young Musicians Competition. She got out of bed and looked at herself in the mirror. She was just a normal 8-year-old girl with messy hair and sleepy eyes. In a few hours, she would walk onto that big stage in front of hundreds of people. Her mother helped her get ready. They ate a small breakfast in the hotel restaurant, though Maya could barely swallow her food. Her stomach felt tight with nerves. Her father tried to make jokes to lighten the mood, but even he seemed tense. They were all feeling the weight of this day. Mrs. Rodriguez met them in the hotel lobby. She looked elegant in a formal dress, her gray hair perfectly styled. She smiled warmly at Maya and told her she looked beautiful in her blue competition dress. Maya managed a small smile back, but her hands were shaking slightly. They arrived at the concert hall an hour before the competition started. Already the building was buzzing with activity. Families of the other finalists filled the lobby. News reporters with cameras moved through the crowd, interviewing parents and filming the young musicians. This competition was a big deal, covered by music magazines and local television stations. Backstage, Maya found a quiet corner to sit and collect her thoughts. Mrs. Rodriguez sat with her, speaking in a calm, steady voice. She reminded Maya of everything they had practiced. Remember to breathe. Keep your shoulders relaxed. Don't rush the tempo. Feel the music, don't just play the notes. Most importantly, enjoy this moment. How many 8-year-old children got to perform in a hall like this? At exactly 9 o'clock, the competition began. The hall was completely full. Every seat was taken. Maya peeked through the curtain and saw the audience. So many people. Her parents sat in the 5th row, looking small and nervous. The judges sat at a long table directly in front of the stage. The justices, 3 serious-looking people with notebooks and pens ready to score every performance. The first finalist was announced. A 10-year-old boy named Christopher walked onto the stage. He bowed to the judges, sat at the piano, and began playing a piece by Bach. His playing was technically correct but lacked emotion. He seemed nervous, and his nervousness showed in the music. When he finished, the audience clapped politely. The judges wrote notes in their books, their faces showing nothing. The second finalist was a girl named Sophie. She was 11 and wore a fancy pink dress covered in sparkles. She played a piece by Liszt that was incredibly difficult. Her fingers moved so fast they were almost a blur. The audience gasped at some of the technical passages. But Mrs. Rodriguez whispered to Maya that technique without feeling was empty. Sophie was showing off her speed but wasn't telling a story with the music. One by one, the finalists performed. Each one was talented in their own way. Some played with beautiful emotion but made technical mistakes. Others were technically perfect but cold and mechanical. The judges remained stoic and unreadable after each performance, giving nothing away. They simply wrote their notes and called for the next performer. Maya was scheduled to perform 6th, right in the middle. As the fifth finalist finished playing, Maya felt her heart pounding so hard she thought everyone could hear it. Her hands were sweaty, her mouth was dry. Mrs. Rodriguez gave her one last hug and whispered, "You've got this. Just be yourself." The announcer's voice echoed through the hall. Our next finalist is Maya Chen, 8 years old, performing Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, Opus 9, number 2. Maya walked from the wings onto the stage. The lights were bright and hot. The audience was a sea of faces all looking at her. She felt very small and very young. But she remembered what Mrs. Rodriguez had taught her about stage presence. She stood up straight, walked confidently to the center of the stage, and bowed to the judges. The 3 justices looked at her with expressions of polite interest. They had seen 11-year-olds and 10-year-olds. Now here was an 8-year-old girl, the youngest finalist in the competition. She could see them thinking that she was probably just making up the numbers, too young to be a real contender. That thought made something spark inside Maya. She would show them. She would make them listen. Maya walked to the piano and sat down on the bench. She adjusted her position, placed her feet properly even though they didn't quite reach the floor, and positioned her hands over the keys. She took 3 deep breaths, just like Mrs. Rodriguez had taught her. In through the nose, out through the mouth, calm, centered, ready. Then she began to play. The first notes of the nocturne floated through the hall, soft and gentle like a whisper. Maya forgot about the audience, forgot about the judges, forgot about her nerves. There was only the music. Her fingers danced across the keys, playing the melody she had practiced thousands of times. But it didn't feel like practice. It felt like she was creating the music for the first time, fresh and new. The piece started quietly, a tender melody that spoke of quiet nights and gentle memories. Maya put her whole heart into those notes. She swayed slightly with the music, her body moving naturally with the phrases. Her face showed every emotion in the piece, from soft melancholy to sweet remembrance. As the piece progressed, the music grew more intense. The middle section was more passionate, with fuller chords and a more urgent melody. Maya's fingers pressed harder on the keys, drawing out a richer, warmer sound from the magnificent piano. She made the instrument sing, pulling emotion from every note. In the audience, Maya's mother had tears streaming down her face. Her father sat perfectly still, hardly breathing, completely captured by his daughter's performance. Around them, other audience members leaned forward in their seats. Even parents of other finalists who had come to support their own children found themselves drawn into Maya's music. At the judges' table, something shifted. The 3 justices had been writing notes during each performance, their faces carefully neutral. But as Maya played, their pens stopped moving. They looked up from their papers and simply listened. The oldest justice, the one who had won this competition 40 years ago as a child, had a look of wonder on his face. Maya reached the final section of the piece where the music returned to its quiet, gentle character. She played the descending melody with such tenderness that it felt like a soft goodbye. The notes grew quieter and quieter, fading away like the last light of sunset. Maya held the final note, letting it ring through the hall until it disappeared into silence. For a long moment, nobody moved. The hall was completely silent. Then the applause began, starting as a few claps and suddenly exploding into thunderous ovation. People stood up from their seats. They clapped and cheered. Some were crying. Maya sat at the piano, surprised by the reaction. She had been so lost in the music that she had forgotten where she was. She stood, turned to the audience, and bowed again. Her cheeks were flushed and her eyes were bright. She had done it. She had played her very best. Whatever happened next didn't matter. She had shared her music with all these people, and they had felt it. As Maya walked off the stage, she looked at the judges. All 3 of them were writing notes furiously. For the first time all morning, the oldest justice was smiling. Just a small smile, but it was there. Maya felt a flutter of hope in her chest. Backstage, Mrs. Rodriguez grabbed Maya in a tight hug. She was crying happy tears. "That was perfect," she whispered. "Absolutely perfect. I have never heard you play better." The remaining finalists performed after Maya, but the mood in the hall had changed. Maya's performance had set a new standard. The last few children were good, some very good, but none of them captured the audience's hearts the way Maya had. One girl even seemed to lose her confidence after Maya's performance, making mistakes she probably wouldn't have made otherwise. When all 12 prepared pieces were finished, the organizers announced a lunch break. The afternoon session would be the sight reading challenge. Maya and her parents went to a small restaurant near the concert hall. None of them were very hungry, but they tried to eat something. Mrs. Rodriguez reminded Maya that the hardest part was still ahead. The prepared piece had gone wonderfully, but sight reading was unpredictable. No amount of practice could fully prepare someone for reading completely unknown music. Maya would have to rely on her instincts and her quick mind. Mrs. Rodriguez told her to stay calm, look for patterns in the music, and don't panic if she made mistakes. The judges would be listening for musicality and problem-solving, not perfection. They returned to the concert hall at 1 o'clock. The afternoon session would begin at 1:30. Maya could feel the nervousness building again. The morning performance had felt like a victory, but now she had to prove herself all over again, and this time she wouldn't have the comfort of playing a piece she knew by heart. At exactly 1:30, the announcer explained the sight reading challenge to the audience. Each finalist would come on stage, receive a piece of music, have 2 minutes to study it, and then perform it. The audience was asked to remain completely silent during the study time. Any noise could distract the young musicians during this crucial preparation. The sight-reading pieces had been chosen by the judges themselves. They were all original compositions by a living composer, pieces that had never been published or performed before. Maya's turn for the sight-reading challenge came after 5 other finalists had already attempted their pieces. She had watched each one struggle in different ways. Some lost their place in the music and had to stop and start over. Others played so slowly that the music lost all sense of flow and feeling. The judges watched with stern faces, writing notes but showing no encouragement. When Maya's name was called, she stood up from her chair backstage. Her legs felt weak. Mrs. Rodriguez gave her shoulders a gentle squeeze and whispered words of encouragement. Maya walked through the wings and stepped onto the stage once more. The audience, which had been quietly murmuring between performances, fell silent. The head justice stood up from the table. He was a tall man with white hair and sharp eyes. He walked onto the stage carrying a folder with Maya's sight-reading piece inside. He handed it to her with a small nod. His face showed nothing, no hint of whether he thought she could handle this challenge or not. Maya took the folder with trembling hands. She walked to the piano and sat down, placing the folder on the music stand. She opened it slowly and looked at the piece of music inside. Her heart sank. The page was filled with notes, more notes than she had ever seen on a single page. The time signature at the beginning was 7/8, which meant 7 beats per measure instead of the usual 4. She had never played anything in 7/8 time before. The announcer's voice broke through her panic. 2 minutes begins now. Maya forced herself to focus. She had 2 minutes to figure out this impossibly difficult piece. She started at the beginning, reading through the first few measures. The rhythm was strange and uneven because of the 7/8 time signature. The melody jumped around unpredictably, with large intervals between notes. The left hand had chords she had never seen in any piece she had practiced. She looked further down the page. In the middle section, the time signature changed to 5/4, then changed again to 6/8. The tempo markings indicated she should play fast in some parts and very slow in others. There were dynamic markings everywhere, telling her to play loud, then soft, then loud again. It was like trying to read a book in a foreign language. Maya felt panic rising in her chest. She couldn't do this. It was too hard. Even the 11-year-olds had struggled, and their pieces hadn't looked this complicated. She was going to fail in front of all these people. She was going to embarrass herself, her parents, and Mrs. Rodriguez. But then she heard Mrs. Rodriguez's voice in her mind, something her teacher had said many times during practice. When you feel lost in the music, stop looking at every single tree and step back to see the forest. Look for the big picture. Look for patterns. Maya took a deep breath and looked at the piece differently. Instead of trying to memorize every note, she looked for patterns. The melody in the first section seemed to repeat with small variations. The chord progression in the left hand followed a logical sequence, even though the individual chords were complex. The time signature changes happened at clear section breaks in the music. It was still complicated, but it had structure. It had logic. She touched the keys lightly, testing some of the trickier passages. Her fingers found the intervals more easily than she expected. The 7/8 time signature felt strange, but she counted it out in her head and realized it was just like 4/4 time with 3 extra beats. She could handle that. The fast section in the middle would be challenging, But if she focused on the right-hand melody and simplified the left-hand accompaniment, she could get through it. The 2 minutes felt like both forever and no time at all. Suddenly, the announcer's voice cut through her concentration. "Time is up. Please begin your performance." Maya's hands hovered over the keys. This was it. She had to play this impossible piece right now, in front of everyone. There was no more time to study, no more time to prepare. Just her, the piano, and this challenging music. She closed her eyes for just a moment and thought about why she loved music. Not because it was easy, not because she wanted to impress people, but because music made her feel alive. Even this difficult piece was just another way to express something beautiful. She opened her eyes, placed her hands on the keys, and began to play. The first few measures were hesitant. The 7/8 time signature threw her off, and she paused slightly between measures, counting in her head. But then she found the rhythm and it started to flow. The melody was strange and modern, not like the classical pieces she was used to, but it had its own kind of beauty. She brought out that beauty, shaping the phrases even as she was reading them for the first time. The audience sat in stunned silence. They had watched other finalists struggle through their sight-reading pieces, but Maya was actually making music. Yes, she made mistakes. She hit a few wrong notes. Once she completely missed a chord in the left hand, but she kept going, never stopping, never losing the flow of the music. When the time signature changed to 5/4, Maya had a moment of confusion. She could see it coming on the page, but executing it was harder. She stumbled slightly, her right hand and left hand getting briefly out of sync. But she recovered quickly, counting out the 5 beats in her head and finding her place again. The fast section in the middle was supposed to be played at a quick tempo, but Maya made a smart decision. She played it at a moderate speed instead, fast enough to show energy but slow enough that she could read the notes accurately. The judges would understand this choice. Better to play clearly at a slower tempo than to rush and fall apart. As she played, something remarkable happened in Maya's mind. The piece started to make sense to her. She began to understand what the composer was trying to express. The unusual time signatures weren't random. They created a feeling of uncertainty and imbalance. The dissonant harmonies weren't ugly. They were expressing tension and conflict. And the final section, which returned to a simpler time signature and consonant chords, represented resolution and peace. Understanding this helped Maya play with more feeling. She wasn't just reading notes anymore. She was telling the story the composer had written into this music. Her face showed concentration but also connection to the piece. She swayed with the rhythm, even the strange 7/8 rhythm making it look natural. At the judges' table, the 3 justices had stopped writing. They were staring at Maya with expressions of disbelief. The youngest justice, a woman who taught at the National Conservatory, had her hand over her mouth. The middle justice, who had played in orchestras around the world, was shaking his head slowly in amazement. The oldest justice, the former competition winner, was leaning forward in his chair, not wanting to miss a single note. Maya reached the final section of the piece. The music became quieter and simpler. The time signature returned to 4/4, something comfortable and familiar. The harmonies resolved from dissonant to consonant, from tense to peaceful. Maya played these final measures with real feeling, bringing the strange journey of the piece to a satisfying conclusion. She held the last chord, letting it fade naturally into silence. The moment she lifted her hands from the keys, the audience exploded. People leaped to their feet, clapping and cheering louder than they had for any performance all day. Maya sat at the piano, stunned and overwhelmed. She had done it. She had actually made it through that impossible piece. She stood and bowed to the judges. All 3 justices were on their feet, something no one in the audience had ever seen them do before. The oldest justice was actually clapping, a huge smile on his face. The other 2 judges were talking to each other excitedly, pointing at their notes and nodding. As Maya walked off the stage, her legs felt like rubber. The adrenaline that had carried her through the performance was fading, and she suddenly felt exhausted, but she also felt proud. Whatever happened now, whatever scores the judges gave her, she had proven something to herself. She could handle the pressure. She could solve musical puzzles on the spot. She was a real musician. Backstage, Mrs. Rodriguez was crying. She pulled Maya into a hug so tight that Maya could barely breathe. "Do you know what you just did?" Mrs. Rodriguez said through her tears. Do you understand how incredible that was? I have never, in 40 years of teaching, seen anything like that. Maya's parents rushed backstage, breaking the rules about staying in the audience area. They didn't care. They had to see their daughter. Her mother was sobbing with joy and pride. Her father picked Maya up and spun her around, something he hadn't done since she was very small. "That's my girl," he kept saying. "That's my brilliant, amazing girl." The remaining finalists still had to complete their sight-reading challenges. Maya and her family returned to their seats to watch. But after Maya's performance, everything felt anticlimactic. The other children tried their best, and some did quite well, but none of them captured that same magic. None of them turned that challenging sight-reading piece into actual music the way Maya had. When all 12 finalists had completed both parts of the competition, the judges asked for a short break to calculate the final scores. The audience was told to remain seated. The results would be announced in 15 minutes. Those 15 minutes felt like hours. Maya sat between her parents, holding both their hands. She tried not to think about winning or losing. She tried to just feel good about what she had accomplished. But of course, she couldn't help hoping. What if she actually won? What if an 8-year-old girl from a poor family, playing on an old broken piano in a tiny apartment, actually beat all these children from wealthy families with expensive training? Mrs. Rodriguez sat in the row behind them, leaning forward to pat Maya's shoulder. Whatever happened, she said, today had been a triumph. The scholarships and prizes would go to the winner, yes. But everyone in this hall had witnessed something special when Maya played. That couldn't be taken away by any score or ranking. After what felt like an eternity, the 3 justices returned to their table. The head justice stood up, holding a piece of paper with the results. The entire audience fell silent, hundreds of people holding their breath. Parents gripped their children's hands. The 12 finalists all sat up straight in their seats, hearts pounding. The justice cleared his throat and began to speak. The head justice stood at the front of the concert hall, looking out at the audience with a serious expression. His voice was strong and clear as it echoed through the space. He began by thanking all the finalists for their performances. He spoke about how difficult it was to judge such talented young musicians, and how every child on that stage should be proud of themselves. But Maya barely heard these opening words. Her heart was beating so fast she felt dizzy. Her mother's hand squeezed hers tightly. Her father sat perfectly still beside her, hardly breathing. This was the moment that would determine everything. The justice explained how the scoring worked. Each finalist received points for their prepared piece and points for their sight-reading challenge. The scores were then combined to determine the rankings. He mentioned that this year's competition had been particularly strong, with several outstanding performances. He paused, looking down at the paper in his hands, and Maya thought she might faint from the suspense. Then he began announcing the results, starting from the bottom. In 12th place, he said, and read a name. A boy near the front of the hall slumped in his seat, disappointed but trying to keep his composure. His parents patted his back, whispering encouragement. The justice continued, calling out 11th place, then 10th, then 9th. Each name that wasn't Maya's made her heart beat faster. Was she going to place at all? Or had she not even made the top rankings? 8th place was announced, then 7th, then 6th. Maya's name still hadn't been called. She didn't know if this was good or bad. Maybe she had done so poorly that they were saving her name for last, for the wooden spoon, the prize for trying. Her palms were sweating. She wanted to close her eyes but couldn't look away from the justice. In 5th place, the justice said, and paused dramatically. He read another name, a 10-year-old girl who had played a beautiful Beethoven piece. The girl smiled bravely, even though Maya could see disappointment in her eyes. 5th place was good, very good, but everyone wanted to win. 4th place goes to Christopher Wu. The boy who had played Bach stood up to polite applause. 4th place meant he would receive a small scholarship and recognition, but not the grand prize. He walked to the stage to receive his certificate. 3 places left. 3rd, 2nd, and 1st. Maya's name still hadn't been called. She was either in the top 3 or she hadn't placed at all. Her mind was spinning. She tried to remember how well she had actually played. Had her prepared piece been good enough? Had the sight reading impressed the judges, or had they seen her mistakes as failures? Mrs. Rodriguez leaned forward from the row behind and whispered, "Breathe, Maya. Just breathe." The justice smiled slightly, as if he knew how much tension he was creating. 3rd place, he announced, letting the words hang in the air. goes to Sophie Chen. The girl in the sparkly pink dress who had played Liszt stood up. She looked thrilled with third place, and her parents were beaming with pride. Third place came with a scholarship to a prestigious summer music program. 2 places left, first and second. Maya felt like her heart might burst out of her chest. Her mother was crying quietly, tears running down her cheeks even though they didn't know the results yet. Her father's jaw was clenched tight, every muscle in his body tense. The justice looked out at the audience, and for just a moment, his eyes seemed to land on Maya. Was she imagining it? This year's competition, he said slowly, has been extraordinary. The second-place finisher demonstrated exceptional technical skill and maturity beyond their years. This young musician has a bright future ahead. Maya closed her eyes. This was it. Either her name was about to be called for second place, which would be amazing, or for first place, which seemed impossible, or not at all, which would be crushing. Second place, the justice announced, goes to Alexander Petrov. A tall 11-year-old boy stood up from his seat near the front. He had played a difficult Rachmaninoff piece with stunning technical precision. Second place was a huge honor, especially at 11 years old. He would receive a substantial scholarship to the National Conservatory. His parents hugged him as he walked toward the stage. Maya's mind went blank. If Alexander was second and she hadn't been called for third, fourth, fifth, or any other place, that meant... But it couldn't be. She was 8 years old. She practiced on a broken piano in a tiny apartment. She had never been to a fancy music school. How could she possibly? The justice let Alexander receive his certificate and returned to his seat before continuing. The tension in the hall was almost unbearable. Everyone knew that only one name remained. The winner. The champion of the National Young Musicians Competition. The justice cleared his throat and looked directly at Maya. There was no mistaking it this time. He was looking right at her. Before I announce our first place winner, he said, I need to say something. In the 30 years I have been judging this competition, I have heard thousands of young musicians. I have witnessed incredible talent and dedication. But what I saw today on that stage was something I rarely encounter, something truly special. He paused, and in that pause, the entire hall seemed to hold its breath. Our first place winner didn't just play the notes on the page. They didn't just demonstrate technical skill, though their technical skill was excellent. This young musician made us feel something. They reminded us why music matters, why we dedicate our lives to this beautiful art form. They showed us that true genius isn't about age or expensive training or perfect circumstances. It's about having a gift and nurturing it with love and dedication. Maya's mother let out a small sob. She knew. Somehow she knew what was coming. This year's National Young Musicians Competition champion, our first place winner, is Maya Chen. For a moment, Maya couldn't move. She sat frozen in her seat, unable to believe what she had just heard. Her name. The justice had said her name. First place. She had won. She had actually won. The audience erupted in thunderous applause. People jumped to their feet, clapping and cheering. Some were wiping away tears. The other finalists, even those who had hoped to win themselves, stood and applauded. It was impossible not to be moved by the story of this 8-year-old girl who had competed against older, more privileged children and won. Maya's father lifted her to her feet. Her mother was hugging her and crying. Mrs. Rodriguez pushed through the crowd to reach them, sobbing with joy. You did it, she kept saying. You actually did it. Somehow Maya's legs carried her down the aisle and onto the stage. The walk felt like a dream. Was this really happening? The justice met her at the center of the stage with a huge trophy, much bigger than Maya herself. It was made of shiny gold metal with a piano engraved on the front. Below the piano were the words National Young Musicians Competition, first place. The justice handed Maya the trophy, and she almost dropped it because it was so heavy. He also gave her an envelope. Inside, he explained, was a full scholarship to the National Conservatory of Music. Maya would receive world-class training from the best piano teachers in the country. All expenses paid. Her entire education from now until she graduated would cost her family nothing. But the justice wasn't finished. He explained that the first place winner also received something else. A chance to perform at the National Concert Hall, the most prestigious venue in the country, in a special recital that would be attended by important people in the music world. Critics, composers, conductors, and concert promoters would all be there. It was an opportunity that could launch a real career. Maya stood on the stage holding the enormous trophy, unable to fully process what all of this meant. The audience continued clapping. Cameras flashed as photographers captured this moment. The other two justices came onto the stage to congratulate her personally. The woman justice knelt down to Maya's level and said, "I have been teaching piano for 25 years, and I have never heard sight reading like that. What you did today was remarkable." The oldest justice, the one who had won this same competition as a child 4 decades ago, shook Maya's hand with great solemnity. "You have a gift," he told her. "A real gift. Don't waste it. The world needs beautiful music, and you have the ability to give that to people. Work hard, stay humble, and never forget why you play." Maya managed to whisper thank you through her shock and excitement. She looked out at the audience and found her parents. Her father had his arm around her mother, both of them crying happy tears. They looked so proud, so overwhelmed, so grateful. Next to them, Mrs. Rodriguez was dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief, beaming with joy. After the ceremony, reporters swarmed around Maya and her family. They wanted to know her story. How did a girl from such humble circumstances develop such incredible talent? Maya's parents explained about the old piano, the 6 hours of daily practice, the sacrifices they had made. Mrs. Rodriguez talked about Maya's natural gift and her unwavering dedication. Maya herself answered questions simply and honestly, her voice small but clear. One reporter asked Maya how she had managed to play that difficult sight-reading piece so well. Maya thought about it for a moment. How could she explain what had happened in those 3 seconds before she started playing? How the music had suddenly made sense to her? How the patterns had revealed themselves and the chaos had become order? "I just listened to the music in my head," Maya said finally. "I looked at it and I could hear it. Then I tried to make my fingers match what I was hearing." The reporter nodded, but Maya could tell she didn't really understand. How could she? Maya wasn't sure she fully understood it herself. It was just something that happened when she connected deeply with music, a kind of magic that couldn't be explained in words. As the evening wore on and the excitement began to settle, Maya finally had a quiet moment with her parents and Mrs. Rodriguez. They sat in a small room backstage, away from the crowds and cameras. Maya held her trophy in her lap, still marveling at its weight and beauty. Her parents sat on either side of her, and Mrs. Rodriguez sat across from them, all 4 of them just being together in this incredible moment. "You know what this means, don't you?" Mrs. Rodriguez said gently. "Everything changes now. The conservatory, the teachers, the opportunities. Your life is going to be very different." Maya nodded. She understood. No more practicing on the old broken piano in their apartment. She would study with the best teachers, play on the finest instruments, and perform in great concert halls. It was exciting and a little bit scary. Her father spoke up, his voice thick with emotion. "We're so proud of you, Maya. Not because you won, though that's wonderful. We're proud because you stayed true to yourself. You played with your heart. You never tried to be anyone else." Her mother added, "You worked so hard for this. All those hours of practice. All those times you could have been playing with other children but chose to stay with your piano. This trophy represents not just talent, but dedication and sacrifice." Maya looked at the 3 adults who had believed in her and supported her. Without her parents' sacrifices, she never could have taken lessons. Without Mrs. Rodriguez's skill and guidance, she never could have developed her gift properly. This victory belonged to all of them, not just to her. The days following the competition passed in a blur of activity and attention. Maya and her family returned to their small apartment, but life would never be the same. The local newspaper wrote a front-page story about Maya's victory. Television stations wanted to interview the 8-year-old piano prodigy from the humble neighborhood. Suddenly, everyone knew who Maya Chen was. At school, Maya became a celebrity. Children who had never spoken to her before wanted to be her friend. Teachers treated her with a special kind of respect, as if she had become someone important overnight. During lunch, kids would gather around her table, asking questions about the competition, about the trophy, about what it felt like to play in front of so many people. Maya found all this attention confusing. She was still the same person she had been before the competition. She still liked the same things and had the same thoughts. But everyone looked at her differently now. Some kids seemed genuinely happy for her. Others seemed jealous or resentful. One boy in her class made snide comments about how she thought she was better than everyone else. Maya ignored him, but the words still stung. The only place where everything felt normal was at the piano. When Maya sat down to practice, the rest of the world faded away. The fame, the attention, the changes happening around her, none of it mattered. There was only the music and her fingers on the keys. In those moments, she was just Maya, doing what she loved most. Mrs. Rodriguez continued coming for lessons 3 times a week, but now she had news to share at each visit. The National Conservatory had been in touch. They wanted Maya to start classes in 2 months at the beginning of the new semester. She would study with Master Vladimir Kozlov, one of the most respected piano teachers in the world. Students came from across the globe to study with him, and he accepted very few. But he had heard Maya's competition performance and specifically requested to teach her. Maya's parents had concerns about the conservatory. It was in the capital city, 4 hours away from their home. How could Maya attend classes there while living here? They couldn't afford an apartment in the city, and they couldn't move because of their jobs. The scholarship covered tuition and instruction, but not housing. Mrs. Rodriguez had a solution. She had a sister who lived in the capital city, a widow with a large house and too many empty rooms. She had offered to let Maya live with her during the week while attending conservatory classes. Maya could come home on weekends to be with her family. It wasn't perfect, but it was a way to make this opportunity work. The idea of leaving home, even just during the week, made Maya nervous. She had never spent a night away from her parents except for the competition hotel. Now she would be living with a stranger in a big city, surrounded by students who had been training at prestigious schools their whole lives. What if she didn't fit in? What if the other students looked down on her because of where she came from? Her mother saw the worry in Maya's eyes and sat down with her for a long talk. She explained that feeling nervous about new situations was normal. Everyone felt that way sometimes. But Maya couldn't let fear hold her back from amazing opportunities. The conservatory would challenge her and help her grow as a musician. Yes, it would be hard being away from home. Yes, she might feel out of place at first, but she was strong and talented, and she would adapt. Maya's father had his own way of encouraging her. He reminded her of how scared she had been before the competition. She had been convinced she couldn't compete with those older, more experienced children. But she had done it anyway, and she had won. This was just another challenge, another chance to prove to herself what she was capable of. Mrs. Rodriguez organized the special recital at the National Concert Hall, the prize that came with winning first place. It would happen in 3 weeks, giving Maya time to prepare a full program of music. Unlike the competition, where she had played just one piece, this recital would last an hour. She would play multiple pieces by different composers, showcasing the full range of her abilities. Choosing the program was exciting, but challenging. Mrs. Rodriguez wanted to include pieces that would impress the important people in the audience, but also pieces that allowed Maya to show her emotional depth and musicality. They decided on a program that included Bach, Chopin, Debussy, and a modern composer. Each piece would highlight different aspects of Maya's playing. Preparing for the recital meant even more practice than before. Maya was now practicing 7 hours a day, pushing her young body and mind to their limits. Her fingers developed calluses from the constant contact with the keys. Sometimes her back ached from sitting so long, but she never complained. She knew this recital was important, perhaps even more important than the competition. The National Concert Hall recital would be attended by people who could shape her entire career. Music critics who wrote for major publications would be there, ready to review her performance. Conductors from symphony orchestras would be listening, looking for young soloists to feature in their concerts. Representatives from recording companies would be evaluating whether she was someone they wanted to sign. One performance, 1 hour of music, could open doors that most musicians spent decades trying to unlock. 2 weeks before the recital, Master Kozlov himself came to hear Maya play. He was a tall, stern-looking man in his 70s with sharp eyes and a reputation for being brutally honest. He had taught some of the greatest pianists of the past 50 years. Students were terrified of his criticism, but desperately wanted his approval. Mrs. Rodriguez was nervous when she opened the door to find Master Kozlov standing there. He had driven 4 hours from the capital city without warning, saying he wanted to hear this child prodigy for himself before agreeing to teach her. Maya's parents quickly tidied the small living room, embarrassed by their modest home and old furniture. But Master Kozlov didn't seem to notice or care about his surroundings. He only had eyes for the piano and the small girl who sat down to play. Maya was terrified. This man was a legend in the music world. His opinion could make or break her future. Her hands shook as she positioned them over the keys. Mrs. Rodriguez gave her an encouraging nod. Maya took 3 deep breaths, just like she always did, and began to play. She performed the Chopin Nocturne, the same piece she had played at the competition. As the music filled the small apartment, Master Kozlov sat perfectly still in an old chair, his face revealing nothing. He didn't smile, didn't frown, didn't react at all. He just listened with complete focus. When Maya finished, silence filled the room. Master Kozlov sat without speaking for what felt like forever. Maya's heart sank. He hated it. He thought she was overrated. Just a lucky child who had fooled the competition judges. He was going to refuse to teach her. Then Master Kozlov did something unexpected. He stood up, walked to the piano, and sat down on the bench beside Maya. Without a word, he began to play the same Chopin piece. But his interpretation was different from Maya's. Where she had played with sweetness and gentle emotion, he played with more complexity and depth. He showed her subtle variations in timing and dynamics that she had never considered. Layers of meaning she had missed. When he finished, he turned to Maya and spoke his first words since arriving. "You have a gift," he said in a thick accent. "A real gift. But a gift alone is not enough. You must develop it with discipline and study. You must learn to see all the possibilities in the music, not just the obvious ones. That is what I will teach you." He stood up and looked at Mrs. Rodriguez with respect. "You have done excellent work with this child. She has a strong foundation. I will build on what you have started." Then he looked at Maya's parents. "Your daughter has potential to become one of the great pianists of her generation. But the path will be difficult. She will work harder than she has ever worked. I am not an easy teacher. I demand excellence. Are you prepared for that?" Maya's parents nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. Master Kozlov turned back to Maya. "And you, young one, are you ready to dedicate yourself completely to this art? To sacrifice playtime and friendships and normal childhood activities? Are you ready to work until your fingers bleed and your mind is exhausted? Because that is what it takes to be truly great." Maya looked up at this intimidating man and thought about his question. Was she ready for that? She thought about all the hours she had already practiced, all the times she had chosen piano over playing with other children. She thought about how music made her feel, how it was the most important thing in her world. The answer was simple. "Yes," Maya said quietly but firmly. "I'm ready." Master Kozlov smiled for the first time since arriving. It was a small smile, but it transformed his stern face. "Good," he said. "Then we will begin your training after the recital. I look forward to working with you." After Master Kozlov left, Maya's family sat together in stunned silence. One of the greatest piano teachers in the world had come to their tiny apartment and agreed to teach their daughter. It still didn't seem real. Mrs. Rodriguez had tears in her eyes. She had brought Maya this far, and now she was handing her student over to a master teacher who could take her to heights she could never reach alone. It was bittersweet, like a parent watching their child grow up and move away. The final 2 weeks before the recital were intense. Maya practiced her program until she could play it perfectly in her sleep. She worked on the small details Master Kozlov had shown her in the Chopin piece, applying those same principles to the other pieces in her program. Every phrase needed shaping. Every dynamic marking needed careful attention. Every note needed purpose and meaning. Mrs. Rodriguez brought a special dress for the recital, more formal and elegant than the blue dress Maya had worn for the competition. It was black with delicate silver embroidery, making Maya look older and more sophisticated. When she tried it on, she barely recognized herself in the mirror. She looked like a real concert pianist, not just a little girl who loved to play piano. The night before the recital, Maya could barely sleep. She lay in bed going through the program in her mind, imagining herself on stage at the National Concert Hall. Tomorrow night, she would play for an audience of music professionals who would judge every note, every phrase, every decision she made. The stakes felt even higher than the competition. This wasn't about winning a prize. This was about proving she belonged in the world of serious classical music. Her mother came into her room and sat on the edge of the bed, just like she had done before the competition. She stroked Maya's hair and told her stories about when Maya was a baby, before anyone knew she had this gift. How she had been such a happy, giggly baby who loved being sung to. How she would stop crying the moment music played. Even then, music had been special to her. Finally, Maya fell asleep, her mother's gentle voice soothing her into dreams filled with pianos and concert halls and beautiful melodies. The day of the recital arrived with perfect spring weather. Maya and her family drove to the capital city early in the afternoon. The National Concert Hall was even more impressive than the competition venue. It was a historic building with marble columns and grand staircases. Famous musicians from around the world had performed on its stage, and tonight 8-year-old Maya Chen would join that list. They arrived hours early for the sound check and rehearsal. Maya walked onto the stage and saw the magnificent concert grand piano waiting for her. It was even more beautiful than the one at the competition, perfectly tuned and maintained. She sat down and played a few scales. The sound was incredible, rich and resonant, filling the enormous hall with ease. The hall manager explained that the recital was completely sold out. Every seat had been taken. Critics from major newspapers and music magazines would be in attendance. Several famous musicians had bought tickets, curious to hear this child prodigy everyone was talking about. The pressure of this information made Maya's stomach flutter with nerves. Mrs. Rodriguez took Maya aside for a final talk before the performance. She held Maya's hands and looked into her eyes with great seriousness. "Tonight is important," she said, "but I want you to remember something. You are not playing to impress these people. You are not playing to prove anything. You are playing because you love music. You are sharing your gift with people who need beauty in their lives. That's all. Just play from your heart like you always do, and everything else will take care of itself." Maya nodded, trying to absorb this wisdom. It was hard not to think about the critics and the important people in the audience. But Mrs. Rodriguez was right. She needed to focus on the music itself, not on what people might think of her performance. As evening approached, the audience began to fill the hall. Maya watched from backstage as hundreds of well-dressed people took their seats. She spotted Master Kozlov sitting in the front row, his face as stern and unreadable as always. Several rows back, she saw her parents sitting with Mrs. Rodriguez. They looked nervous but proud, dressed in their best clothes. At exactly 8 o'clock, the hall manager gave Maya the signal. It was time. She walked from the wings onto the stage, and the audience fell silent. The lights were bright and hot. The piano gleamed under the spotlights. Maya walked to the center of the stage and bowed to the audience just as she had been taught. Then she walked to the piano, sat down, and placed her hands over the keys. This was the moment she had been preparing for. An hour-long program that would showcase everything she had learned, everything she could do. She took 3 deep breaths. 1, 2, 3. In those 3 seconds, something happened. All the nervousness, all the pressure, all the worry about critics and important people, it all fell away. She remembered why she was here. Not for fame or recognition or career opportunities. She was here because music was her language, her way of speaking to the world, and she had something to say. Maya's hands came down on the keys, and the first notes of Bach's Prelude in C major floated through the hall. The music was clear and pure, each note perfectly placed. She played with confidence and joy, her body swaying gently with the rhythm. The audience disappeared from her awareness. The critics didn't exist. There was only the piano and the music and Maya's complete connection to both. She moved through the program with growing confidence. The Bach led to Chopin, the Chopin to Debussy, the Debussy to the challenging modern piece she had chosen to close the recital. Each piece showcased different colors and moods. Some were gentle and contemplative. Others were passionate and powerful. Maya brought her whole self to each one, holding nothing back. As she played the final piece, a complex modern composition with unusual harmonies and rhythms, Maya felt completely free. This was what she was born to do. This was her purpose. Her fingers flew across the keys, navigating the difficult passages with ease. She had practiced this piece so many times that her hands knew it by heart, allowing her mind to focus purely on expression and feeling. The final chord rang through the hall, and Maya lifted her hands from the keys. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then the audience exploded into applause unlike anything the National Concert Hall had heard in years. People leaped to their feet, clapping and cheering. Some were crying. Others were shaking their heads in amazement. Maya stood and bowed, overwhelmed by the response. She looked out at the audience and saw Master Kozlov on his feet, clapping with genuine enthusiasm, that small smile on his face again. Her parents were crying and hugging each other. Mrs. Rodriguez had her hands over her heart, tears streaming down her face. The applause continued for several minutes. Maya bowed again and again, unable to fully process what was happening. Finally, the hall manager came onto the stage and handed her an enormous bouquet of roses. Maya held the flowers, their sweet scent filling her senses, and bowed one final time before walking off the stage. Backstage, she was immediately surrounded by people. Critics wanted to interview her. Photographers wanted pictures. But Master Kozlov pushed through the crowd and put a protective hand on Maya's shoulder. "Enough," he said firmly. "This child has just performed for an hour. She needs rest, not interviews." The crowd backed off, respecting his authority. Master Kozlov looked down at Maya with pride in his eyes. "That," he said simply, "was exceptional. You are going to do great things, Maya Chen. I am honored to be your teacher." Those words meant more to Maya than all the applause and praise from the audience. Master Kozlov rarely gave compliments. For him to say he was honored meant everything. The morning after the recital, Maya woke up in the hotel room to find her face on the front page of the national newspaper. The headline read, "8-year-old prodigy stuns. Concert hall with masterful performance." The article described her playing as mature beyond her years and a once-in-a-generation talent. The critic who wrote the review said he had never heard such emotional depth from such a young performer. Maya's parents read the article aloud over breakfast, their voices filled with pride and wonder. Other newspapers and websites had similar reviews. Every critic who had attended the recital praised Maya's technical skill, and more importantly, her ability to connect emotionally with the music. Some compared her to legendary child prodigies from history. One reviewer wrote that if Maya continued developing at this pace, she would become one of the great pianists of the century. This kind of attention was both thrilling and overwhelming. Maya was still just 8 years old. She still liked to play with dolls sometimes and watch cartoons on Saturday mornings. But the world wanted to see her as a serious artist, a prodigy who would change classical music. The gap between who she was and who people expected her to be felt huge and confusing. Mrs. Rodriguez helped Maya navigate these strange new waters. She explained that fame was temporary, but skill was permanent. Reviews and articles would fade. But what Maya learned and how she developed as a musician would last forever. She shouldn't let the praise go to her head or the pressure paralyze her. She should just keep working, keep growing, and stay true to herself. 2 weeks later, it was time for Maya to begin her studies at the National Conservatory. Her parents drove her to the capital city and helped her move into Mrs. Rodriguez's sister's house. The house was large and comfortable, in a quiet neighborhood near the conservatory. Mrs. Rodriguez's sister, Aunt Carmen, was a kind woman in her 60s who welcomed Maya warmly. She showed Maya to her new room, which was bigger than her entire bedroom at home. Leaving her parents that first time was harder than Maya expected. She had been excited about the conservatory, eager to study with Master Kozlov and learn from the best teachers. But when her mother hugged her goodbye and her father's eyes filled with tears, Maya suddenly wanted to go home. She wanted her small apartment, her old piano, her familiar life. This new chapter felt too big, too fast, too much. But she didn't cry or complain. She hugged her parents tight, promised to call them every night, and waved as they drove away. Then she went inside with Aunt Carmen and tried to settle into her new life. The National Conservatory was unlike anything Maya had experienced. The building was modern and beautiful, with practice rooms, performance halls, and classrooms filled with serious music students. Children as young as 6 and adults in their 20s all studied together, united by their love of music and their dedication to excellence. Maya's first day was overwhelming. She attended theory classes where they discussed concepts she barely understood. She met other students, many of whom had been training at the conservatory for years. Some were friendly and welcoming. Others seemed competitive and distant. A few looked at her with obvious jealousy. This 8-year-old who had won the national competition and was now studying with the famous Master Kozlov. Her first lesson with Master Kozlov happened on her 3rd day at the conservatory. She walked into his studio with nervous excitement. The room was large, with a beautiful grand piano and walls lined with photographs of Master Kozlov with famous musicians. He sat in a chair waiting for her, looking as stern as ever. Without greeting or small talk, Master Kozlov told her to play something. Maya sat at the piano and played the Chopin Nocturne, the piece she knew best. She played it beautifully, with all the feeling and technique she had developed over months of practice. When she finished, she looked at Master Kozlov, hoping for approval. Instead, he frowned. "Again," he said, "but this time play it as if you are saying goodbye to someone you love forever. Make me feel that pain and loss." Maya played it again, trying to inject more emotion. When she finished, Master Kozlov shook his head. "No, you are playing the notes with sad expression, but you are not feeling the sadness. You must live inside the music, not just perform it." Again, they worked on just the first page of the nocturne for the entire hour. Master Kozlov stopped her after every few measures, asking her to reconsider her interpretation, to find deeper meaning, to connect more profoundly with the music. It was exhausting and frustrating. Maya had played this piece hundreds of times and thought she knew it perfectly. But Master Kozlov showed her that she had only scratched the surface. The lessons continued this way for weeks. Master Kozlov was demanding in a way Mrs. Rodriguez had never been. He accepted nothing less than complete dedication and constant improvement. Some days Maya left his studio in tears, feeling like she would never be good enough. But other days, when she finally played a phrase the way he wanted, when she finally understood what he was trying to teach her, she felt like she had discovered a whole new level of music. Life at the conservatory fell into a rhythm. Maya attended classes during the day, practiced for hours in the afternoon, had dinner with Aunt Carmen, and then practiced more in the evening. On weekends, she went home to see her parents. Those trips home became the highlight of her week. Her mother would cook her favorite foods, and her father would tell jokes to make her laugh. Mrs. Rodriguez would visit, and they would talk about music and life and everything Maya was learning. But even as Maya adapted to her new life, challenges kept appearing. The academic classes at the conservatory were difficult. She was years younger than most students and struggled with some of the advanced music theory. Some of the older students made fun of her when she didn't understand concepts they found easy. She felt small and out of place. There were also performance opportunities that both excited and terrified her. The conservatory held regular recitals where students performed for each other and for guests. Maya was asked to perform at these events because of her reputation. But performing for fellow students was different from performing for regular audiences. These students knew music deeply. They could hear every mistake, every weakness, every flaw. Their judgment felt harsher than any critic's review. At one particularly memorable recital, Maya performed a Beethoven sonata she had been working on with Master Kozlov. She made several small mistakes, moments where her fingers slipped or she lost concentration. The regular audience might not have noticed, but the conservatory students did. After the performance, she overheard two older students talking about how overrated she was, how her competition win must have been luck, how she wasn't really that special. Their words stung deeply. Maya went back to her room at Aunt Carmen's house and cried for hours. Maybe they were right. Maybe she didn't belong here. Maybe she was just a kid who got lucky once and now everyone would see she was nothing special after all. But the next morning, Master Kozlov called her into his studio. He had heard about the performance and the mistakes. Maya braced herself for harsh criticism. Instead, he sat down beside her at the piano and spoke gently, something he rarely did. "Do you know why I agreed to teach you?" he asked. "Not because you won a competition, not because you play perfectly. I have taught many students who could play without mistakes. Technical perfection is common among dedicated students, but you have something that cannot be taught. You have soul. When you play even with mistakes, you make people feel something. That is rare and precious." He paused and looked at her seriously. "You will make many mistakes in your career. Every musician does. Some performances will be bad. Some critics will dislike you. Some people will say you are overrated. But none of that matters if you stay connected to why you play music. Do you remember why?" Maya thought back to her small apartment, to the old piano, to the feeling of joy that filled her when she first discovered music. "Because it makes me happy," she said. "Because music is how I talk to the world." Master Kozlov nodded. "Exactly. Hold on to that. Let that guide you through the difficult times. Because there will be many difficult times ahead. But if you remember your love for music, you will survive them all." The months passed and Maya grew both as a musician and as a person. She learned to handle criticism and not let it destroy her confidence. She learned to push through the frustration of difficult pieces and trust the process of improvement. She learned that being talented wasn't enough. She needed discipline, dedication, and determination. She also learned to balance her musical life with some normal childhood experiences. Aunt Carmen made sure Maya wasn't practicing every waking hour. They went to parks, watched movies, and baked cookies together. These small, normal moments helped Maya remember that she was still a child, still growing up, still discovering who she was beyond the piano. When Maya turned 9, the conservatory held a special birthday recital in her honor. She performed a program of challenging pieces, including some she had been working on with Master Kozlov for months. Her parents came, along with Mrs. Rodriguez and many people from her old neighborhood. The performance was her best yet, showing how much she had grown in just 1 year of study at the conservatory. After the recital, as Maya celebrated with cake and friends, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. Just over a year ago, she had been a normal girl practicing on an old piano in a tiny apartment. Now she was studying at the most prestigious music school in the country, learning from one of the world's greatest teachers and performing in major concert halls. But the most important thing hadn't changed. She still loved music with the same passion she had felt as a 3-year-old first touching the piano keys. That love was her foundation, her North Star, the thing that made all the hard work and sacrifice worthwhile. Master Kozlov approached her during the birthday celebration. He handed her a gift, a book of advanced piano pieces by various composers. Inside the cover, he had written a note in his careful handwriting. To Maya, who reminds me why music matters. Continue to grow, continue to learn, but never lose the heart that makes your playing special. With pride and respect, Vladimir Kozlov. Maya hugged the book to her chest, feeling tears prick her eyes. This man, who was so stern and demanding in lessons, cared about her deeply. He believed in her future. He saw not just what she was now, but what she could become. As the celebration wound down and guests began to leave, Maya sat at the piano in the recital hall. She played softly, just for herself, a simple melody that came from her heart. It wasn't a famous piece by a great composer. It was just music that expressed how she felt in this moment. Grateful, happy, excited for the future. A little scared, but ready to face whatever came next. Her father came and sat beside her on the piano bench, something he hadn't done in years. He didn't say anything, just listened as she played. When she finished, he put his arm around her shoulders and smiled. "I'm so proud of you," he said quietly. "Not because you're famous or talented. I'm proud because you stayed true to yourself. You worked hard, but you never forgot what matters. You're going to do amazing things, Maya. I know it." Maya leaned against her father, feeling safe and loved. The future stretched ahead of her, full of possibilities and challenges. There would be more competitions, more performances, more lessons with Master Kozlov. There would be successes and failures, praise and criticism, easy times and hard times. But she was ready. That 3-second moment before she started playing the impossible sight-reading piece at the competition had taught her something important. Sometimes the most difficult challenges become clear when you stop panicking and start listening. When you trust yourself in your training. When you remember that music isn't about being perfect. It's about being honest and brave and willing to share your heart with the world. Maya was only 9 years old, but her journey as a serious musician had truly begun. She had discovered her gift, developed it through dedication, and proven she could compete at the highest levels. Now came the real work of becoming the artist she was meant to be. The journey would take years, maybe decades. There would be triumphs and setbacks, moments of doubt and moments of certainty. But in this moment, sitting at the piano with her father beside her and her loved ones around her, Maya felt nothing but joy and gratitude. She was exactly where she was supposed to be, doing exactly what she was meant to do, and that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.